I want to tell you about how my entire life fell apart and why it was the best thing that ever happened to me and the catalyst for something truly amazing. So I'm Arrabella Schippers, creator of the ARVAmethod and the PATH Coaching. And in early 2020, I had just turned 35 and I felt like I had everything figured out. And I was building the life I wanted. I'd spent over a decade gaining expertise in holistic health and fitness, clinical bodywork, personal training, and health and wellness coaching. I had helped hundreds of people transform their lives through wellness, mindfulness, and habit change. I had a thriving practice in Chicago, a relationship, a beautiful condo, and plans for marriage and maybe starting a family. And then everything came undone. First, the pandemic hit and shuttered both mine and my fiance's businesses. Then there was one crisis after another in my family, and those relationships that were such a huge part of my life and identity began to collapse under the weight of some very painful realizations. By early 2021, I had a health scare and surgery, and my relationship became toxic. I called off my engagement, we separated, and sold our condo in a painful rush against everything that I wanted. And suddenly, I was all alone. I was renting a tiny apartment in a city that felt more dangerous at that time than I could remember. And I was just trying to rebuild my practice and recalibrate my life after losing pretty much everything. But one of the biggest challenges was keeping the passion and focus required to be good at my profession. See, my work is intimate. I hold space for others, helping them process and grow, addressing physical pain, limitations, and teaching people how to build new habits and self-confidence. But I was completely depleted, trying to care for others when I could barely anchor myself. I had built an incredible career and had always faced the world with such discipline and intensity, but I just didn't have it in me at that time. I felt like I was living someone else's life that didn't quite fit really who I was. I felt like an imposter. But it was in that darkness, in that space of isolation, that things really began to unravel, but not in a bad way. See, I started to realize that everything that I thought I'd healed in myself, I'd actually just been coping with. I'd never actually looked into the abyss of myself, never opened all those places within and sorted through all the things I'd been carrying, things that didn't even belong to me. I realized that so much of my identity was a kind of mosaic of expectations that I'd met and values that I'd picked up, things that I was protecting myself from, and things that I'd buried deep within. I desperately needed to pull myself through, so I did what I know how to do, and I started building discipline and routine around my daily practices. I was meditating and moving and feeding myself well, strength training and spending time in nature, and it was the medicine I needed. And in that ritualization of connecting with my body and my needs, I started doing breathwork intuitively, not from an app, not because I saw a video or not something that I read. It just started happening during my practices and I leaned into it. I let my breath guide me through physical and emotional release that was more powerful than anything I'd experienced, including plant medicine. And through this intuitive breathwork practice, combined with daily meditation and conscious self-care, things within me started to change. I started confronting old and outdated patterns. I stopped reacting to the world, and I started seeing the unconscious forces that had shaped my life. I discovered what was true from within, and I began to grow in a way that I hadn't even imagined was possible. Now, this led me down a rabbit hole of research that eventually brought me to the work of Dr. Stanislav Grof and the holotropic breathwork system. I attended one breathwork event and it had a huge impact on me. So I tracked down the practitioner's teacher, a man who had been practicing for 35 years, who'd studied with Grof and had just begun teaching his own unique system of neo-shamanic breathwork and Jungian coaching. He had never worked with me before and usually only trained people he'd mentored for many years, but something about our conversation convinced him to make an exception. That 2-year intensive changed everything for me, and it gave me language for what I had come to intuitively in my darkest time. I learned about the maps of the unconscious, the power of archetypes, the process of individuation, which is the process of becoming who you truly are beneath all the conditioning and expectations. And this is what I call the path of inner work. Now, let me be clear about what inner work actually is, because it's not what most people think. It's not spiritual bypassing or costuming as enlightened or whatever you see a lot of people doing online these days. Inner work is the process of becoming conscious of the way you view the world and recognizing that you can expand that view. It's unmasking how we see ourselves and others so that we can consciously choose how we want to show up. Inner work takes us from reacting to responding, from life happening to us to becoming the authors of our own growth. It changes our relationship to ourselves and to others and helps us uncover, nurture, and expand the richness of our inner landscape, bringing magic and mystery back to life. But through my own journey and working with clients at transitional points in their lives, I've learned something important. The pressure you feel, that hunger for deeper meaning and connection, it's not a sign that something's wrong. It's actually an invitation to stop living from old patterns and start living from conscious choice, to start treating yourself, your body, your life, and the world around you as sacred. The people I work with through the path of inner work experience profound transformations. They feel back in control of their choices, behaviors, and emotions, and their mindset. They feel confident and open-minded about new experiences. They're reignited with a passion for life and what it has to offer. They feel more connected within themselves and to their loved ones. But most importantly, they understand what matters most to them and how to nurture the parts of themselves that often get abandoned when we conform to life's external expectations. Now, I know what some people might think. This sounds too abstract, or I've tried personal development before, or I don't need growth, I just need to focus on my own goals. And I get it. That's exactly how I was. Honestly, I was like the DIY evangelist over here. But here's the thing. This isn't about positive thinking, quick fixes, or promises of linear progress. This work combines the somatic and health realities of what we need to do to take care of our bodies better with the transformative work of Jungian individuation. It's about becoming a wise person who can see themselves and the world around them clearly and meet it consciously. And the stakes here are real. There's real pain that comes from avoiding the call to do the inner work and from limiting yourself to what's familiar and comfortable. If you stay stuck in old mindsets, old patterns, and old self-image, thinking that growth is behind you, you'll end up controlled by those unconscious forces, like the shadow keeping you from knowing your true self, the archetypes hijacking your gifts and connections, and the inner critic keeping you small and insecure. One of Jung's most famous quotes is, "Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will think it's our fate." And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. But it's not our fate, it's our choice. I created the path of inner work for people at the precipice of transformation. Those who want to enrich their lives from the inside and learn how to grow, nurture, and care for their body, mind, and spirit in a way that only becomes possible when we truly discover ourselves and cultivate self-trust and inner wisdom. My work draws on my unique background, combining somatic and health expertise with Jungian individuation, symbolism, and maps of the unconscious. My mission with this work is to help create wise people who can meet these times we're living in with consciousness and compassion. So if something feels off in your life, if you're sensing there's more to life than what you're currently experiencing, and if you're ready for deep transformation, then this work might be calling to you. I met my truest self in those dark places that I had yet to explore until I was forced to by circumstance. The question is, are you ready to meet your truest self? If you're interested in learning more about the path of inner work, you can find the link to my website in the description below. Be well.